73 years and 9 days ago, as of recording this, the longest day in history took place. June 6, 1944, was a normal 24-hour day, but what happened that day during the amphibious assault and the airborne landings on the night before that took place in Normandy, France, changed the course of history forever. What happened on those 5 beaches is nothing short of a miracle. If the operation had failed, the world would be different. But yet, D-Day was filled with those what-if situations. What if the landings had failed? What if the paratroopers had failed the night before? What if only half the beaches were taken? There's too many to list, and not the focus of this video. I recently traveled to Normandy to see it all firsthand, and the purpose of this video is to show what I saw. Not necessarily of the battle during the battle. There's way better people that you could watch to see how the battles took place. I just wanted to share the stories of what is there today that you can go see. As Americans, you're actually paying for it currently in your taxes. All of our cemeteries and locations in France are run by the Graves and Registration, which act through the US government, for the most part. Otherwise, most of the museums are actually run by French people, and the German sites are actually run by volunteers. So essentially, you're still paying for it, though, so you might as well go see it or just watch this. During this, you'll see photos of mine, as well as a couple I may have stolen online. And I do apologize for the next picture. I just thought it was funny. It's a weird mannequin I saw in one of the museums. But continuing on here, I do want to share this because I think it's something worth sharing. On my trip, I had the opportunity to go to all 5 beaches: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Sword, and Juno. I also visited the American Cemetery at Col-de-Verre-Saint-Mur, one of the 6 former German grave sites in Normandy at Lacambe, the Airborne Museum at Saint-Mary-Église, which is what you're seeing right now, as long as many other sites. Golf course that's on Omaha Beach, which all of its holes are named after famous journals of World War II. And here, I added this on here. This is at the Airborne Museum. There was a letter that was sent from the German commander to the American commander at Bastogne, which is where the Airborne was at, and he's like, surrender, and the American general sent back nuts to him on Christmas Day. Kind of funny. I thought it was cool that they had a copy of that. So, but going on, right now is the American Cemetery at Normandy, and it has a couple of amazing things that I want to point out here. You've probably already seen the photos. I'm kind of in out of order here, but when you first enter the site, to lack of better words, in the site you see a half circle on a wall. On this wall is a list of all the names of men that were never found. On this wall, though, there are some that have a flower next to them, and that means that they were found eventually, and they were buried in the cemetery after being found after its initial building. On the 20-foot statue marble that you saw a couple seconds ago, that is called the Spirit of American Youth Rising from the Waves. That was created in the honor of all the young American men that died on the beach. Also, fun fact, there is 3 women buried in here, as well as 3 Medal of Honor recipients, 2 Roosevelts, 1 Theodore Roosevelt Jr. that was killed after landing on D-Day, and he was the oldest man to land on D-Day and getting a Medal of Honor that day. And the other Roosevelt, which is another son of President Theodore Roosevelt, he had actually died in World War I, but the French allowed him to be buried next to his brother before it was given to American, because technically the cemetery itself is technically American land, but it's only granted to us in a weird way. It's tax-free though, which is really nice of the French, but that's not the focus. Also on the site, there's a chapel located in the very middle. Over 9,300 bodies are there, with 307 unknown. Currently, though, you are seeing pictures of Pointe du Hoc. I did get to see that as well. That is the actual cliff that men, some actually climbed that by hand to get up here and fight Germans. Absolutely nuts. Just the height of that by your hands, because most of them shot out ropes from the boats that they landed on, but they were too wet, and so they missed the target, so most of them actually did climb that by hand. Those guys were psychotic, but in the best of ways. I say that respectfully. But that is the American cemetery. I want to go move on to the German cemetery. because that's coming up here eventually. Although I do want to point out that these are all bunkers that are still here. There's very few because the French had to get materials, and so everything that's not stone was put into rebuilding the country. So that's why you don't see much of anything other than very rundown, shot up, torn up, blown up stone or concrete pillboxes and stuff like that. There's no metal anywhere because the French took them after World War II, which is understandable, to rebuild it. Also here, those are actual craters from the bombs. And I believe the next photo here is me, and I'm 5'11" in one of them. They're just massive, and they've been almost untouched by nature. But now on to the German cemetery, which resonated almost more with me. Not that it's weird to say that because in our culture, all Nazis were bad, but as I, learned, because I like learning history, I learned here that a decent amount are not the unspeakably evil men that we've come to know. This wasn't their fight, but they had to fight it, and died, during the shooting, even though this wasn't their fight. Also, here is the Pegasus Bridge. That's the actual Pegasus Bridge that was, there during World War II. So that's another cool thing. That's Utah Beach there. Fun fact. I need to get to the German beach real quick, though. Not the German beach. The German cemetery. The German cemetery at Lacambe is ominous, to say the least. That feeling comes when you first arrive. Because when you arrive, you notice the only way into the burial site is through a building with a door only big enough for one person. And that's done on purpose. The Germans believe you enter death alone. And that even though you might die with your tank crew or a couple guys beside you, you ultimately enter death and the afterlife by yourself. And that's their ideology, and that's why it's built that way. Buried at this cemetery is 21,200 plus souls, 200 which are unknown. One of the known soldiers, though, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, an SS Hauptsturmführer soldier, Michael Whitman, is buried here with his tank crew. He is the Tiger tank commander, known infamously or famously, depending on how you want to view it, as one of the best tankers in the Normandy campaign, inflicting many casualties and receiving the Cross, which is the highest honor a German soldier can get. He's buried there, and it brings to a subject that the Germans, at the American cemetery, all the burial sites you can see in my photos are perfectly lined up. Each way it is very symmetrical, and everything's down to a point. But in the German grave, if you died with your tank crew, they usually buried you all together, almost on top of each other. Because the way they're buried, what I was told by the people that volunteered there, is they're buried standing up, not down. And so they're actually all, if you see 6 names on a plaque, that's the doorway I was talking about. If you see 6 names on a plaque or 2 names on a plaque, that means they're buried next to each other standing up. But they're spaced apart, like those are spaced apart, and that's because they're normal graveyards. But a couple are grouped together, and that usually means that they were tank crew, or like that's all a tank crew, because their bodies are just unidentifiable, which is creepy to say the least. But the German graves, you have 5 crosses, one taller than the others, that represents the commander, and there's 4 soldiers following him into the afterlife. The big mound, I'm not sure if I actually got that in a photo or not, that's where a mass grave was that the Americans did, and tossed all the bodies in. And they're just unidentifiable from each other, but even though they have got dog tags in there. The rest of this is just photos from Paris I just threw in just to get more time into the video. And there's so much more I can go into. There's so many more stories you could tell. I almost wish I could go back maybe someday when I'm older. But I hope you like this. I hope you learned something. or maybe you saw something cool, just don't forget this history. That's all I can say. And this last photo here is a stupid truck with Pirates of the Caribbean on it, just to end on a lighter note. But thanks for watching. If you want to learn more, there's always somewhere to learn from. History Channel, other videos on YouTube that are better at me than describing stuff. Just go look and research it up. Just don't do it from Wikipedia. Thanks.